All right, the title of my message today is The Other Side. Yeah, The Other Side. Now, I want to do a survey first. How many of you here have children? Can you put out your hand? All right, okay. How many of you here have working children? Okay. How many of you here have working children? No. How many of you here have married children? Okay. All right. I don't know whether you have the experience, because usually if your children are married, usually they don't stay with you, right? They have their own place to stay and might not even be near to your house. I don't know whether you have the experience before, right, where you call them, right? I don't know about daughters and sons, because I'm a son. I have an older sister who stays in Bangsa, right? And my parents are in JB. We are all from JB, right? But I'm now staying in Seremban because I'm serving in STM. Now, I seldom call my parents, but my sister calls my parents every day. I don't know about, might be the difference between a daughter and a son, right? I don't know about you, right? And sometimes my parents will call me, and I don't know whether you have the experience, and when you call your children, those who are not staying with you, and sometimes they are a bit annoyed. That means they are very impatient. It's like, anything else? Anything else? Hey, I'm very busy right now. I don't know whether you have this experience before or not, right? It's like our children or your children are always very busy, right? And they have their life they have their life to live. And then you'll be like, it's as if you are begging them for time to just talk to you. And sometimes I feel that I do that to my parents, which I want to confess that is wrong. Children, don't go back and practice this, right? But I feel that sometimes as children, as we are, we enter into working life and married life, we tend to focus less on our parents, especially when they are away from us, because we say, our sight, our mind, right? And I remember there was once, many years ago, when I started off as a pastor, one of the busiest things, or one of the things that a pastor has to do well is preaching, right? Because I don't know about in EFC, but in Presby Church, if you want to employ a pastor, first thing you do is that you invite the pastor to come to the church and preach first. And then the leaders, after the preaching, the leaders will go to the members and say, hey, how is the preaching today? Do you like it or not? Like, do a bit of survey. And if the members say, I cannot, I don't even know what he's talking about. Hopefully this is not a comment I'll get from you afterwards, right? And that is how we want to determine whether he's a good, or he or she is a good pastor or not, primarily depending on how good the preaching is, or how faithful the person is in expounding the text, right? So for us, when we preach, there's expectation from the members. Because in a presby setting, I think in every church, because I wanted to say in presby setting, the word is very important. As if in any other church, the word is not that important. So on that particular day, I was preparing the message. It was a Thursday, all right? And it was near to Sunday already. And my father-in-law called me, all right? He called me, and then he said, Daniel, now it's 9 in the morning. Can you pick me up from the house and send me over to this shopping mall at 10 o'clock? In my heart, it was like, wow. In Chinese, we call 随传随到. That means he summons me, he expects me to be there in 1 hour's time, right? And to send him to the shopping mall. Now, a bit of background, he has stroke. He was suffering from stroke. He was always on wheelchair. He couldn't travel around by himself, right? So he has been having stroke for many years already. And in my heart, I was like, okay, tahan first. I don't want to burst, all right? Because in my heart, I was feeling like, wait, I need to finish my sermon, Sermon is very important, I didn't say this to him. And he only accepted Christ a few years before that incident. He was that kind of person that when my wife was young, when she went to youth fellowship, my father-in-law would say that, if you go to church, don't come back. If you come back, I'm going to break your legs. That's that kind of attitude that he had when my wife was a youth, right? So, and then he became a Christian many years after that. So I was thinking in my heart, okay, what should I do? Should I tell him I'm very busy preparing my sermon, so therefore, can you ask someone else? So I tahan, I say, okay, I'm very busy right now, I'll call you back in a while. Why? Because I wanted to consult my wife. So I called my wife. Instead of consulting, I complained. I said, what happened to Papa? Because my wife's father, I'm in-law, right? So I said, hey, what happened? Why is it that your father suddenly called me? And I asked her, I told her this. I said, you have 5 brothers. Why is it, okay, I'm a human after all, I'm a sinner after all. Why is it that your father had to choose me of all the other sons that he has. All right? Should I tell him that, hey, can you ask someone else or not? Then my wife, in her wisdom, okay, believe in your wife's wisdom, right? In her wisdom, she says, can, in a very sarcastic way, you can tell him this, but he will never ask you to send him to a shopping mall again. She's basically saying that because he trusts in you, he trusts you, he trusts that he can, he can depend on you, therefore he called you. In comparison to maybe other children. So in my heart, like, wow, I should not have called you. Now you guilt trip me. It's like, better not, better go. Then, you know what was the text that I was preparing that day? The Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan. So in my heart, I was like, hey, today is Thursday. Thursday, right? I was mentioning Thursday, and I'm just 50%. I cover just 50% of my sermon preparation. What should I do? If I bring him, I know it's not just bringing him. I have to go around with him. Pushing the wheelchair, everything. Then my one day gone. They were left with Friday, Saturday ministry already. But then I felt that God was speaking to me or prompting me in my heart, like, hey, come on, this is the parable of the Good Samaritan. What is the value of preaching a good message when you cannot practice it? Right? So eventually, I called my father-in-law. I said, don't worry, I'll come in a while. All right? And yes, the message might not be as solid, in terms of the theory on that day, because I spent few hours with my father-in-law, which I was supposed to use it for sermon preparation. But because I practiced it, there was conviction in what I preach. Now, my father-in-law has passed away a few years back. But since that experience, every time he calls me, or every time he called me, I will always be there for him. So therefore, I didn't have any regrets when he passed away, because I knew that I had done my part. All right? Of course, I'm not here to boast this to you, but it's because I want to say this to you is because we are in a journey of discipleship. Discipleship is not just about attending classes, yes? We don't expect because of modernization, sometimes we expect we are a factory. We mass produce disciples. You go through all these classes, you are mature disciples. You go through the leadership classes, you are a leader. Which is not true. As leaders, you also know it's not true. Doesn't mean that a person goes through the discipleship classes, automatically the person becomes mature. Can I hear a yes? Okay, everyone agree, huh? So you know the maturity of this church, huh? Right. So I want to say is that there are moments in life or in daily living that God pushes us into discipleship moments, or what we call teachable moments, that actually is very uncomfortable for us. He pushes us into situations. It might be this morning, when you came out, your son says, I don't come to church. Why? I just don't want to. And you get so angry. Or yesterday you had a quarrel with someone else. But these are situations where God allows us to be in. Not God wants you to quarrel with other people, but God puts you in situations where He puts you with people that might rub shoulders with you. And how do you react, or how do you respond? So God doesn't just appear on Sunday in the church building. God is with you all the time. Amen? And today we want to learn this lesson from this text, where the disciples, we might not observe this, but Jesus was very intentional in His disciple making. 3.5 years He was with His disciples. He was always taking opportunities or creating opportunities to challenge their comfort zone, to challenge them in their comfort zone, so that He will push them out to be more loving towards other people. Right? So we're going to observe this today. Okay. Now this is, okay, right. So this is a story just now. So the question that will come up for today is always this: is it necessary? Was it necessary for me to go and pick up my father-in-law when he had 5 other sons? I wasn't even counting the daughters, because he had 3 daughters, so 8 of them, right? Quite a big family by today's standard, right? But in my heart at the time, I was asking this question: is it necessary for me to go out while I was preparing God's word? It's so important. How can I fail the people for the sake of one person? But I know that was the right decision when I brought him out. And today I can say this to you, not so to boast about it, but to recognize that God is always at work in our life. So as you step out from this place, be sensitive to how God works. Doesn't mean that He has to always prompt you on something, but observe the difficult situations in your life. That is where God is at work. Right? So when we come to this passage, that day when evening came, now when evening came means sunset already. For them, sunset means the next day, for the Jews. Evening came means what? Tired already, no? Because whole day ministry, right? If today's the whole day you ministry, you evening you go back, you collapse already. All right, I don't know about Pastor Loh, maybe energetic, right? But for me, if Sunday evening I go back, I peng san already. Because it's very exhausting, to minister to people, right? You teach, you preach, even saying hello with a smiley face, not smelly face. It also, especially for introverts like us, all right, it's very exhausting. So that day when evening came, you could imagine how tired they were already after ministering to the people. They were always ministering to the people. So evening was like, take a break already, because everyone had go back already. It's already night for them already. He said to these disciples, let us go over to the other side. All right? The other side. Now, these three words, the other side, which is the title for today, it might not mean anything to us, but for them, it is terrible. Because the other side of the Sea of Galilee was called Decapolis. Decapolis means 10 cities. The Gentile cities. The cities of the unclean. Right? You know it for yourself. For the Jews, everyone else in the whole wide world is unclean except themselves. So for Jesus to say, hey, now, it's not now let's go and lepak at Aeon, or let us go and lepak at someone's house. No, let us go over to that side and where the people that you don't like, they are at. When you are emotionally tired, physically tired, you cannot tahan this kind of thing. You cannot think about I still need to go and entertain these people. I need to go to people that I don't like. I don't want. Because I'm already very exhausted already. So this is unclean territory. The other side is filled with people that they despise, that they think that they are not the chosen one. These are the people that God has abandoned. Unclean territory. Now can you imagine when Jesus said that, in their mind will be like, is it necessary? Of all places, why not stay on this side of the sea or this side of the lake and let's just lepak among our people? Why go over to the other side? There's nothing worth going to on the other side. Now think about the experience that I had, right? Remember my conversation with my father-in-law? I was asking this question, is it necessary? Is there any meaning in doing this when I have more important things to do? And for them, perhaps the more important thing right now was to sleep, to rest, or to have a debrief with Jesus after the whole day of ministry, right? So we know in the story. Now we didn't read this part. We read the before and the after. Before was Jesus asked them to go to the other side when they went to the boat, right? Then after that we read the part where they have already gone over to the other side where they met a person who was demon-possessed. We know that story. But in between that story was also a very familiar story where they were on the boat where Jesus was sleeping. Means he was too tired. Jesus also human, right? He also needs to sleep. Right? And it was being written that there was this furious what? How do you pronounce this word? Squall, right? Because I don't know, so I ask you. Good teachers, all right? I should ask Hui Chao. Hui Chao's English very good, all right? So a furious squall, it actually means in the original text, a hurricane. Now, you might be wondering, we always wonder, why is it that among the disciples, there were 4 that were seasoned, experienced fishermen, and they were so scared, right? Not that they didn't know. They were also working on the Sea of Galilee for many years already as an experienced fisherman. And now they were experiencing this hurricane. Why were they so scared? Because it was a hurricane. Now, if you study the geography and the weather during, at the Sea of Galilee, how many of you have been to the Sea of Galilee? Okay, a lot of rich people here. Huh? No, just joking. All right, I was there last March as well. Right, it was very beautiful. Right, the Sea of Galilee. Did you all have the Holy Communion there when you were there? Yes, right. Okay, just an advertisement. STM organizers trip to Israel. But the weather there can switch very easily. Because you have the cold weather, the cold wind coming down from Mount Hermon, and then you have the hot air at the Sea of Galilee. When it mixed together, it's very easy for it to have for the place to have a very turbulent and very unstable kind of weather. So in a split second, there can be, strong wind. To the extent that, the word that's being used in Greek is translated into English is hurricane. That is why the disciples, they knew the risk they were taking when they were going over to the other side. That is why they might be thinking, is it necessary? All right? And some more, this guy, his name is Jesus, asked them to bring him over, and he was sleeping. You really have to give respect to Jesus. I really know how to sleep. He's a deep sleeper, you know. You can imagine, you know, the boat. It's not like a Titanic, you know. It's a boat, you know. And I'm sure the boat was shaking, you know, and the water was coming in, and Jesus was still sleeping. Wow, he must really trust God, right? But then again, I'm sure the disciples were asking, hey, is it necessary or not? Or some of them will be saying this, I knew it. I knew that it wasn't it wasn't a wise choice to go over to the other side. You see? You know, sometimes people say that. See, I told you already. You know, sometimes we say that. I'm sure they were already thinking or discussing among themselves. I told you already, it wasn't a wise decision to go over. See that Jesus, some were sleeping. Ayyo. So imagine in their heart, they were already affirming their analysis. It wasn't wise, or it isn't wise, and it isn't necessary to go over to the other side. Going to the unclean people, the unclean territory, someone now we have the hurricane that was stopping us. And we know the story. Jesus rebuked, right? The same word that he's going to use when he rebuked the demons. Here, the author is trying to tell us that Jesus has control over the situation. He has power over the situation. It's not like he has to, you know, go and find a book, you know, okay, first step 1 SOP, step 1, okay, look at the wind and shout 3 times. No, there's nothing like this. He just said, be quiet, and that's it. Not because of whatever formula, but because he is God. Amen? So he has control over whatever situation in our lives. We might be going through hurricanes in our life and we'll be thinking, wow, God, how come how come you have abandoned us? Like what the disciples were thinking. But Jesus said, have faith in me. Trust in me because I have control. You might be thinking I'm sleeping, but I have full control of the situation. We have a God like this, amen? Whatever problems that we have, you know, sometimes worship leaders, not Francine, but sometimes worship leaders, you know, because she didn't say that, so I'm saying it's not her, right? But sometimes worship leader, you know, they will say things like this, all right? When you come in now, put your problems behind, put your problems outside, and just come here and focus on God. What is the worship leader saying? So when you go out, pick up your problems again. You know what I'm saying? You didn't say things like this, right? All right. And it's very common. I was formerly a worship leader. All right. So I do say things like this. You know, put your problems aside. I mean, I know that the worship leader is saying, you know, focus on God lah. Don't let your problems distract you. I understand. But the implication is like, oh, okay, problems put there, park there first. So I go out. Please, everyone remember to take your problems when you go out. But no, you bring your problems in. You surrender your problems to God. Not that the problems will disappear, but you know who is in the boat with you, yes? That is why we don't get joy after there is, or we don't get joy because there's the absence of problem. You know, we get joy because we have Jesus. All right, so again, the disciples, they were still thinking, wow, how come this is Jesus? Why is it that you put us in this situation? It's not like I made the wrong, you know, I made the wrong move, I made the wrong decision, so therefore, you know, very good, I kena. No. They didn't make the decision. Jesus was the one who made the decision, and they had to bear the consequence. Right? And we know that Jesus demonstrated to them that, hey, look who is in control. I am in control. Right? And they, you know, in this, because this parable, this story is recorded in the other Gospels, but in this particular Gospel, the author recorded what they said, you know, because they said, teacher, don't you care if we drown? They were very sarcastic. They were like accusing Jesus. Hey, hello, you don't care. You call us to bring you over and then you sleep. Hey, you don't care. That's why Jesus scolded them. Why don't you have faith in me? Because they were so panicked to an extent that, you know, they were actually accusing Jesus that you are a person who doesn't care for your disciples. And it reflects on God as well. God is a father who doesn't care for his children. Which is why Jesus scolded them, because they had a distorted perception of God and Jesus, which is very serious. And if you think that Jesus doesn't care about you, think again. Right? So they came over to the other side after Jesus has rebuked the storm. They have overcome round 1, the problem. Now that they have entered to this area, I'm sure this area, most likely, this area they will have never stepped foot on. If not for Jesus, they will never step foot on this area for the rest of their life, because Gentiles. Now you know it for yourself, some of you will know it. During Jesus' time, that is what we call Palestine. They don't call it Israel. Palestine, they are divided into 3 regions. All right? In the north is Galilee. all right? We have the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus ministered to most of the time. Then in the north is Judea, all right? Correct me, I'm wrong, Hui Chuan, all right? Judea, all right? My knowledge not so good, Bible knowledge. In the middle is what? Samaria, where Jesus met the Samaritan woman, right? At the well. Now, you might know this, is that most of the Jews, if not all of the Jews, when they go from the north to the south or south to the north, they will go on the other side. They will avoid Samaria in order not to come in contact with the Samaritans. Now, Samaritans were not really Gentiles. They were half Jews, half Gentiles. All right? That was during the days of, the Babylonian exile, the captivity, where, when the Jews were still in that area, but most of the Jews were being taken away to Babylon. And the Babylonian government, what they do is they bring people from other nations and park them in Israel. So that people intermarry. That's why they call it like half Jews or mixed breed. So the pure Jews, they look down on the mixed Jews. Like they call it paria, the mixed Jews. So that's why they don't even talk about Gentiles. Even among the Samaritans, right, the Jews also see them as unclean. So to avoid them, they will go a long route to avoid them, from the north to the south or south to the north. That's how they detest or hated the Samaritans. But now worse still, they are going into a pure Gentile area. Can you imagine that? An area where they are filled with people, they were filled with people that they don't like, they despise, they think it's so dirty. Now when they came to this site, you must understand the gravity of the situation. You read, okay, nice story, okay, Jesus, you're powerful, you good. But we must slowly understand and digest for ourselves the gravity of the situation. First, as I said, it was an unclean territory because it was filled with Gentiles. Then what happened was that you have what? This guy, all right, this guy who was demon-possessed, he was living among tombs. Now, tombs, in the Jewish teaching, it was an unclean place because it was filled with dead people, right? Yes, tombs are filled with dead people. And for them, the Jewish interpretation is not just that if you touch the dead, you are unclean. You touch the things that are associated with the dead, including the tomb, you are also unclean. So it was not just unclean territory. Immediately when they came to an unclean area where is what we call the tomb, right? Where in the Old Testament, if you touch all these things, you have to be cleansed and you'll be separated from the community for 7 days. Then what happened is that this guy who lives among the tomb, he has an unclean spirit. All right? Again, the third unclean here. And then what happened is that nearby there were unclean animals because we know that after this, Jesus was going to send the demons to the pigs. And for the Jews, like Malays, pigs were unclean. Cannot even touch don't even talk about makan. Cannot even touch the pigs. So can you imagine Jesus bring these guys here, all right? After that hurricane, coming step foot onto that Decapolis or that area, you have all these unclean elements that were waiting for them. How would they think? Now this is even more serious than my father-in-law called me. I was like, hey, I'm busy preparing my sermon. No. Now this is way heavy, way more serious than that. You have this situation where this guy, who is like crazy, because in the Bible it says that people chained him and cannot. And he will break the chains. No one could control him. And he was basically crazy because he was demon-possessed. And we know that he was not possessed by one demon, many demons, because when Jesus asked the demons, who are you? And they say, we are legion. Legion means a big group. Legions is a big group of army, soldiers. So basically the demons were saying, we are not just one, we have many of us, Jesus. Now, if you are one of the disciples, how would you feel? Would you feel, wow, thank God, it's a teachable moment for me. Wow, good. After this, I can become a leader. Would you think like this? You'll be thinking, again, is it necessary? Jesus, I'm very tired now, I've been serving the people with you for the whole day already, and all you want us to do now is to come to this place that is unclean, times 4. Now, if you were the disciples, how would you feel? Think for a moment. How would you feel? Now, this is the same Jesus that is discipling you today, right? How would you feel? Would you want to run away? Would you want to just stand there and don't go near to the person that is unclean? Now, this is not just a Gentile, unclean Gentile. This is a Gentile who has an unclean spirit living in the unclean tomb and surrounded by unclean animals. Wow, this Jesus really. What is super discipleship course, is it? All right? Now, for them, I tell you, for the disciples, I'm sure they'll be thinking, why are we here? Maybe they will be even, it's not recorded, but maybe they will even be thinking or talking among themselves, hey, let's go away. Why are we here? And they saw Jesus going near, they go further and further away. I'm sure no one will be like Peter. You know, sometimes Peter and Thomas are very gung-ho one. Hey, Jesus, don't, I'll go in front. Peter always like that one. I'm sure when Jesus was walking ahead, they were like, okay, we support you in prayer. For them, they saw a crazy guy. Because this crazy guy was not, he was uncontrollable. Even chains, even people, no one can control him. He was a crazy guy. Why would you go near to a crazy guy? Because you will get hurt, right? You know, sometimes when we see an accident, you know, when we're driving, when we see an accident there, right, we will be thinking, you know, should I go and help or not? If I go and help, later the person tipu me, how? Or if I go and help, how about my son in my car? You know, all these things we'll be thinking. We'll be thinking for ourselves first. If I go and help, will it benefit me? Or you might not think like that. You might think like, if I go and help, will it cause risk to me? You know? Which is quite normal. You know, those of you who have learned, let's say, first aid, you will know. I was formerly in St. John. We know that first thing, you assess the situation right. You must make sure that you are safe first. This is the right procedure. But then sometimes we as Christians, we overthink. If I go and help, I'll be late for church service. If I go and help, later I touch the person, later I get COVID, how? I tell you, the Christians overthink. For them, this is another crazy guy that is not worth helping. But for Jesus, he was not looking at a crazy man who was like a lion. He was looking at someone who had a hurricane in his body. He was looking at a person who was helpless, who was desperate, who needed help, and no one wanted to. You see? The way that Jesus looked at people is very different from how we as a natural human being would look at person. We look at the person dirty, you know, unclean, you know, it's not worth it, or different race, I don't want. Jesus, regardless of race, regardless of whatever situation the person is in, he looks at a person, he knows that he needs to save the person because he loves every person. Can I hear an amen? Now think about this, you know, when you put the hurricane situation, you know, the hurricane at the lake situation, and you put it beside this one, you will realize one thing, you know. Think about this. The disciples, when the hurricane was near to them, or they were experiencing the hurricane, thank you. It's okay, don't need to hush. We like children's, sound, all right? When they were experiencing the hurricane, they were also equally desperate. Remember that? They were equally desperate. They were like, wow, you know, how can we do this? You know, okay, maybe starting off, they said, okay, no need to wake Jesus up. But after that, they realized that the situation is worse, is more serious than they were thinking. They had to wake Jesus up, their master, because they also knew that Jesus was very tired, because he was the main guy teaching the people, right? But now you have a situation that these disciples, they were so desperate, they woke Jesus up and said, don't you care for us? And Jesus, who was in control, he rebuked the storm, or he rebuked the hurricane, and they were safe. So they experienced salvation in that sense, right? They just experienced salvation from Jesus Christ. And when they stepped out from that boat and they saw someone not facing an external hurricane, but an internal one, the Bible didn't record that they actually had compassion for this person. So we can safely assume, you know, a human nature will be like, hey, please, no need. But Jesus was showing them, you know, you experienced salvation for hurricane. Now this person is also facing a hurricane worse than yours because it's an internal hurricane. I'm going to save him. You see Jesus? When everyone else despised him and said this person is helpless, you know, we're going to kick him out into the tomb. We chain him, also no use. We're going to leave him there. He is just an animal. For the people there, he was just an animal. But for Jesus, he was a human being created in the image of God, worth loved and respected. And he saved him. That is Jesus. He never gives up on anyone. Because you can imagine that situation, right? If you were there, sometimes we see beggars, we also like, Okay, okay, 1 ringgit, okay. We are like this. Christians or non-Christians, we are like this. But Jesus seeing this person, imagine, I'm sure he hasn't bathed for years already. And he was there naked perhaps, and then chain, he has broken chain, I guess. And no one wanted to go near him, but there was Jesus, God himself, coming to this man and save him. Aren't we glad that we have this God? We don't have a God who is always angry with us. Have you done your quiet time? No. Okay, I don't want to hear your prayer. You didn't come church last week? Okay, suffer first. We don't have a God like this. We have a God, regardless of our performance, he still loves us. Regardless of our condition, we might have messed up our life, he still loves us nonetheless. Can I hear a yes? Now we have to always remember this, because sometimes we forget that our God is a God that is gracious. So after that, we know, I'm going to skip that part of the story where we know that, these demons were being sent to the pigs, and the pigs were drowned, right? The pigs rushed into the river, and they were drowned. I'm going to skip that part, all right? But now that everything is settled, Jesus was getting into the boat. That means Jesus was going back to his side. Now think about this, Jesus, who is God himself, it seems that he already knew that that means it was his plan. I think it's safe to say that it was his plan to come over to the other side just for this guy. Because after that, he went back. Case closed. Mission done. Go back. Go back where? Go back to the other side, where he came from. So imagine this. Jesus, in his sovereign knowledge, he just wanted to go there and minister to this person, settle this person already, go back. So he was there just for that one person. Now, it's not just for that one person, I think equally important is he wants to teach the disciples this lesson. He could have done that same thing. I'm sure he could have found someone, of that similar kind of situation in his area. Why did he have to go to the other side, to the unclean territory, to find this person? I'm sure he wanted to teach his disciples something there. So you realize the other side is not just about going there geographically. It's not just about crossing the river, crossing the sea or the lake geographically. It's about crossing your psychological, racial, cultural barrier. The other side is not just something external. The other side is something eternal. Jesus was trying to teach them a lesson that, look, every person is loved by God. Right? Because we saw just now, unclean times 4, right? It was a crazy situation. But Jesus wanted to teach the disciples, these are the people that I love as well. So Jesus was getting to the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed back to go with him. Now there was this man here, he was saved already. All right? And he was not just saved, he was not just saved physically or spiritually in the sense that he was freed from the demon possession. He wanted to be with Jesus. So you can say that he was saved, salvation. Jesus did not let him, but said, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you. Now, very strange, right? If Jesus had been going around in his area asking, you want to follow me? Come and follow me, right? He always said that. And there are people like, I don't want to. Remember the story of the rich young ruler? Right? And then Jesus said, sell everything that you have and follow me. Did he follow? No. And Jesus looked at him and Jesus was sad. So Jesus wanted people to follow him. And now there was this person who wanted to leave behind everything that he had to go with Jesus. And Jesus said, sorry, no room for you. Go home. Now, you're very curious, right? Why would Jesus say that? He said, go home to your own people. But because you must understand that Jesus' primary mission was among the Jews, right? It wasn't yet a mission to the Gentiles yet. But then here was a Gentile that was being saved. He was sending out his first Gentile missionary to the Gentile area to speak about Jesus. So maybe that was the mission that Jesus had for him. And therefore, it's not that he did not believe in Jesus, or Jesus said, hey, don't believe in me. Jesus is just saying, stay put in where you are, continue to believe in me, but spread the gospel about me. So go home and tell them how much the Lord has done for you. And how he had keyword, mercy, means compassion. Jesus, not only he has control over our situation, he has compassion on us. Can I hear a yes? Because for a God who has power, who has control over things, but he does not love us, what's the purpose? He will use that power to punish you, right? But to have a God who has control over our situation and He has compassion on us is a God that is worth following. He had mercy on this guy when no one gave him a chance. No one gave him, no one think that he would survive or he would change. But here was Jesus giving him a second chance. Now, but I want to provide an insight into this situation as I reflect on this morning. Okay, it's a very fresh insight. This insight just came to me, or I thought about it this morning only. Okay, fresh from the oven. Now, not only did Jesus wanted him to be a missionary among the Gentiles, because Jesus was going back to the Jewish area, but think about this. For this guy, which choice was easier? To leave behind everything and follow Jesus, or to go back to his people that despised him in the first place, who hurt him in the first place? Which was easier? Follow Jesus, right? You know, sometimes we have this kind of feeling like, we want to migrate or we want to go to another place to restart, or go to another church to restart because we have so much hurt in the previous church or in the previous environment. We want to also, same thing, maybe workplace as well. We want to restart again. Or restart. Because what has happened in the past has brought so much hurt into my life. When I see those people, when I see that familiar environment, I feel hurt. So I want to go away from that place. I want to go to a new place and meet new people to have a new start. So from a human point of view, it was easier for that guy to follow Jesus. Right? But think about this. When Jesus said, you go back to your people, your own people, sound like, my own people lah. But these are the people that despise him, These are the people who didn't give him a second chance. Now, just think about this situation again, all right? Give me a bit of time. Now, he was chained by the people. He was bound by the people, right? And then he broke it, right? Now, if you have the experience with people who are demon-possessed, you know that the demon doesn't manifest itself all the time. Sometimes it will manifest, then sometimes you are tired, and then the person will like suddenly realize that, what happened to me just now? Some of you, if you have come across people like this, there is a different season. It was changed now and then. So you can imagine the picture. You can think like this, when the person is being bound, it means it was the time that the demon did not manifest itself. Because if the demon were to manifest itself, you wouldn't even have the chance to put a chain on that person. You following me? So imagine, he would be fully aware of the people, his own people, chaining him. He'll be like, hey, don't do this to me. They don't care. Because they know that when the demon manifests itself, gone already. So he will have a lot of hurt. Like, I remember this guy. I remember this lady. I remember this auntie. They hurt me. But now Jesus is saying, you go back to the other side. The other side are these people that you don't like, these people that hurt you, these people that humiliated you. You go back to them and you tell them how much Jesus has loved me or loved you and how much Jesus also loves them, which is difficult. So again, I want to come back to this where, the gospel is first experienced, then explained. A lot of times for us, right, when we say share the gospel, we might take out the booklet for spiritual law. Nothing wrong with that. It's a good summary. But we sometimes we think that the gospel is always on a theoretical level or a rational level. Okay, if I can memorize these 4 points, I can preach the gospel. But gospel is a good news about Jesus loving you in spite of who you are and what you have done. And it must be experienced every day. It's not like something, I always say this, like a lot of us as Christians, right, we receive the gospel one point in our life. Even for those of you who are second generation Christians, I'm sure that there was one point in your life that you say, maybe your parents say that, hey, you want to follow me to say the sinner's prayer? There was that moment that you decided to follow Jesus. You accept the gospel. You accept the gospel because, wow, Jesus loves me in spite of who I am. Now that you have the gospel, you leave the gospel outside already. Why? Because the gospel is no longer useful for Christians. Now I go on to learn about discipleship, about doctrines. The gospel is outside the church building, outside my life, so that when I need it, I'll use it to share with with non-Christians. Are you following me? As if the gospel is only for people who are not yet Christians. But what I'm saying here is that Christians need to re-experience and relive the gospel every single day. That, wow, I'm so bad. I have done so many wrong things, but Jesus still loves me. Thank God for that. Now, if every day you experience the gospel, you wouldn't be an arrogant person. You wouldn't like, hey, look at me. pastor, I'm not saying Pastor Low, I'm saying myself, okay? Hey, look at me. Hey, Rolex, Nothing wrong with that. I'm saying is that sometimes we forget that we are just sinners. And we use all these external things to boost our image and boost our confidence and think that we are great, which we are not. But if every day you experience the gospel and you realize that even though I'm a sinner, but Jesus still loves me, you will be humble, you will be loving, you'll be more gracious towards other people. And then when you explain the gospel, it's not just theory. It's really you experience it and you explain it. That's why Jesus didn't say, hey, you go and memorize the 4 spiritual laws. As I said, it's nothing wrong about that. But Jesus is saying, tell people how much he has done for you. Because Christianity is not just a religion, a set of rules. It is more than that. It's a relationship. Okay? Now, very quickly, I want to just tell my story on the other side. Okay? I know the time. Now, in 2006 to 2008, I was studying in STM. Now I'm a lecturer, but before that, I was a student in STM, studying Master of Divinity. All right? The picture is a bit small here, but I'm here. All right? I'm always the focal point. All right? So I was here, but if you can look, you can't now. It's a bit too small. Okay? But if you can see from where I'm seeing, most of the people I was mixing with were non-Chinese. All right? They were Indians. They were the Ibans, Karazans, Lumbawang, all these people. And this is the beauty of STM, because you have people from all over Malaysia coming. And at that time, we also accepted international students. So we have Burmese, Indonesians, and Indons as well. And I felt proud by myself because I felt that I was on the other side. I was really following the commandment of Jesus or what Jesus is teaching. You must go to the other side. You must be with people that are not like you. You must show the love of Jesus Christ to them. You must always be out of the comfort zone. Right? So I'm always very proud to say, hey, when I was in STM, when I was studying there, every semester we have a reading week in the middle. That means first half of that semester, study, 1 week reading week, then second half of the semester. You following me? Right? By the end of the first half of the semester, which is by the reading week itself, I will have finished up all my assignments. You might say I'm smart, you can say that, okay? But because most of the students, they will be doing last minute work at the end of the semester. That means I'm already earlier than them, faster than them by 2-3 months already. That's how fast I was. Now, why did I do that? Because I purposely wanted to do that not so that I can show off, but because I can go around helping the East Malaysians. I purposely finished my work so I can free up my time to go to the other side to help these people. That's why when the juniors came in, they were asking me, hey, why is it that you always go to this guy's room? Why is it that these guys from East Malaysia, they always go to your room? What do you do? So I'll explain. They come so that I can teach them how to do the assignment. So I felt good about myself because I was like, I'm always on the other side. I'm always mixing around with people who are of different skin color, of different language, of different culture. That's 2006 to 2008. So I felt good about myself. I thought like, I'm an example. Right? And you cannot argue with me, that's my track record, right? It was until 2014 that I realized that I wasn't as good as I was. 2014, I went to a school because my wife is a primary school teacher, Chinese primary school. All right? So she got the school to invite me. She got the school to invite me because at that time there was still UPSR. Right? And UPSR, the students, right, they were being arranged to if you're Buddhist, you go to this group. If you're Christian, you go to this group. Then we will arrange for a religious leader to come and motivate you, pray for you. Right? Last time we also have in secondary school, there will be someone who come in and say, 全科 A. That means all your subjects get A. I don't know, it's like a hypnotizing or what. Right, to motivate you. Right? So when we were there, we were supposed to give a short speech from the Bible because all Christians. So Christian was a small group. The Buddhist, Taoists, they were in a hall because most of the Chinese, they are Buddhist or Taoist family, right? So I was there. I shared the message. I also felt good about myself. You can understand why I always feel good about myself, And then, all right, then the teacher said, okay, after that, because there was other teacher apart from my wife, then the teacher said, hey, thank you for your sharing, all right? I want to invite you now for lunch, all right? We have this teacher's room for lunch for VIPs. So I was like, free lunch, why not? Right? So when I wanted to go over, I said, okay, I'll come in a while. When I went over, to my surprise, all right, It was not just me, I thought like, must be only me because I give a good speech, you wanted to reward me. No, when I reached there were already other people there. Who were there? The monks. Now, remember I told the story that, I told you the story that I felt good about myself because I felt that I was on the other side. I realized I was not. Because when I saw the monks, it's not that I have problem with Buddhists or what, It's just that when I see religious leaders that are not Christians, I don't know how to talk to them. I feel like, why I talk to you, then you talk about Buddhism, I'm not interested. Then only I realized that the other side, there are other areas in the other side that I have not crossed over. I thought I have crossed over, but they were Christians. But now I have people who are of other religion, and what more, they are religious leaders, that I realize that I feel uncomfortable to sit with them, to eat with them. Now, this is not right, I'm not saying that this is a good example. I'm just saying that I thought I have crossed over to the other side, but I have not. I have not. Maybe you could say that I've crossed over to the other side for this certain group of people, but this certain group of people, I have always stood on this side. Then only I realized that my love for other people is not as great as I thought. There are also people that are created in the image of God that is worth our respect and our love, right? So why can't I go? So I must admit, at that point, I couldn't overcome. I left the building. I didn't go and sit down with them. Of course, now I look back, I should have. I would love to sit down and have communication and dialogue with them. But at that point, God revealed to me, hey, you are not that great after all. You still have some discipleship courses to take, called the other side. Not class, in life. Right? So, if you talk about the ultimate example of the someone who went over to the other side would be Jesus. Because he was God himself. He left his crown, he left his riches, and he came to this world and be a human being. Allowing himself to be confined to the limitations of human beings, worse still, to accept the humiliation of those who have created him. The Word became flesh and he made his dwelling among us. If Jesus was the ultimate missionary who went over to the other side, which is here, who are we to say that we should don't need for us to go to the other side? Can I hear a yes? Jesus demonstrated the greatest love by being the greatest missionary who came over to the other side. All right? So my last question to you is this. In your life right now, you might say that there are certain people that you have crossed over to the other side. All right? Congratulations. But think about this right at this moment, as God is ministering to you or God is speaking to you. Who is on the other side of your life right now? It might be other race, people of other religion. It might be your colleagues. It might be even your spouse. I don't know, that one only you know. But who is on the other side? And we had election yesterday, right? And this Perikatan Nasional, it was a big win for them in every state, right? Even for states like Selangor, they are slowly coming up already. Now, to end this, all right? I know, we don't talk about politics in the church, but it's very obvious, I'm just stating the obvious. So there was one day I was watching YouTube. Sometimes YouTube, you have advertisement coming in, right? They force you to watch the advertisement. Sometimes there's the skip ad button. Habis, 15 seconds, you have to watch the YouTube commercial. Then I was very surprised because it was Perikatan Nasional advertisement. I don't know whether you watched that before or not. So there was two Malay, one man and one woman. They were talking. And then the woman was saying, I don't want to go back to Kelantan. All right? Your sister went back to Kelantan, is it? Or study? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay? So she was saying that, okay, I don't want to go back to Kelantan. Then the husband said, we must go back. You see the Chinese, they are voting. Why is it that we Malays are not voting? Oh, I was like, racial tone, overtone. You see, how come there's Malay, Chinese? Why Chinese vote? Must say Chinese, a lot of Chinese vote, therefore we Malays must vote. Then later on, I saw on Facebook that Perikatan Nasional, they were playing the racial cards. And there was this poster, I don't know you saw this banner on they took a picture. They say Malays, this is the Tanah Melayu. Orang bukan Melayu adalah pendatang. Have you seen that? I mean, it's not new news lah. But after a few years now, we haven't been hearing this kind of thing, and this thing is cropping up. And then the thing is that most Malays have voted for Perikatan Nasional. What I'm saying here is that racism is real in Malaysia. So what do? Do we just go and scold people? No. Even more, we as Christians, we must go to the other side. The political leaders always like to play racial cards. But those who can bring real change to Malaysia are people like us. Christian, not Christian, never mind. We be among people and show the love of Christ. So my last question again to you is, who is on the other side in your life right now?